Congratulations, first of all, on entering WWE's Hall of Fame during WrestleMania. When you were asked to get that honor, tell us what was going through your mind at that moment, Jim.
Well, it happened on a Sunday morning, and really I was kind of thrown back because every year about this time the company calls me to go to WrestleMania. And they start giving their way ahead of themselves about getting you down there because they got a lot of particular arrangements to make with all of us from all over the place. So I was thinking about calling them back and telling them I wasn't going to come to WrestleMania this year because I went last year and I kind of had a rough one last year. And I said I think I'm going to lay off for a year or so. And when I did call them back, I wasn't expecting this at all. So it was totally from the left field, and I called the guy back on a Sunday morning, and from the office, and I said, "Listen, I had such a rough time going down to Orlando last year. I had a 3-hour delay getting into Orlando, which set me up for a bad start." And then the whole weekend of WrestleMania last year, it seems like everything they had me to do, I was just a little bit behind where I wasn't enjoying it. And then lo and behold, when it was time to come home, I had a 4-hour delay out of Orlando going back to so I was burnt out. So I was basically telling him that I wasn't going to be coming, and thank everybody at the company for asking me to come down and have a nice WrestleMania in New Orleans, and I think I'm going to set this one out. He said, "Well, Jim, that's all good." He said, "But Vince and everybody, Vince McMahon and everybody wants you to go into the Hall of Fame." Well, when he told me that, what can you say? I was like, I was wobbling around because I wasn't expecting it, and that is exactly the truth as it happened, and that's how I found out about it.
Hillbilly Jim joining CFWE. Jim, you broke in during the wrestling boom back in the early 80s. At what time did you know it was going to take off like it did?
It was actually pretty immediate with me. That the whole Hillbilly Jim concept and me and the whole thing just came together immediately, and it was accepted right from the very beginning. So as soon as it began, I knew it was going to get over, and then at that time I was just in it. And I was on the ride, and I didn't look back, and it happened very soon, real quick, and honestly, guys, for my whole life from then on, it's never really stopped, and it must have been something that just captured everybody, and must have been at the right time, at the right place, and here we are looking at the Hall of Fame thing now. It's almost an unbelievable story you couldn't hardly imagine.
You have a Canadian connection working briefly for Calgary's Stu Hart promotion. What was that like for you, Jim?
Oh, it was wonderful. I had a brief stay out there because I was out there for a little while, and everything was going wonderful. And my mother became ill, and that forced me at that time to come back home abruptly. But goodness gracious, I have wonderful memories of Calgary and Stampede Wrestling, and of course Stu Hart, and the whole situation out there was just a big eye opener for me. It was the first real territory I'd ever been to, and and that company and that family was pretty iconic, in the wrestling industry, and it was just wonderful. My short but brief time in Calgary, and of course I became friends with the Hart family, but in particular, a lifelong friend of mine has been Bruce Hart, and he continues to be one of my dearest and best buddies even to today.
You've worked with some of the best in the business, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake Roberts. Who was that one wrestler you really enjoyed working with, Jim?
I had particularly great matches with, I liked Harley Race. Another great guy and a real good technician in the ring was Macho Man Randy Savage. I enjoyed working with Cowboy Bob Orton in the ring. Another real great wrestler to have a match with was a guy named the Honky Tonk Man. And those are just a few of the names, but really, as I look back on it, for different reasons, they're all They all were great in their own particular ones. I enjoyed working, like I say, with the magnificent Morocco, Don Morocco, a lot. He was great. But and the best big man I ever worked against, I think, was the one called they called him the One Man Gang, and I think they changed his character to where he was Akeem the Dream for a while. He was for a big man, he was very good. And I've got a lot of those thoughts from time to time, and you know, on occasions like this, with this Hall of Fame thing coming up, I've been thinking about that a lot more because I've been getting a lot of good questions like this. Really, I don't set up guys and think a lot about yesterday or anything because I'm one of those kind of guys that lives in the now, and I'm not one of those guys that just tries to live in the past for a lot of reasons because sometimes it's not good to do that, but I do love to talk about it when someone brings me up. Like that question you just asked me hasn't been asked to me in a while.
You worked back in the WWF days, early 80s. How would you compare the WWE today with the WWF as you knew it back in the early 80s?
Well, from the small amount of time that I'm around that company today, everything has moved on, guys, and moved into the future, as you'd say, and it's completely changed dramatically from the dressing room to the way they do things because the world has changed and evolved, and it's kind of strange to us that were there back in the 80s and the guys even before me or even some of the guys in the 90s. They have a hard time keeping up with the rapid changes that are going on. You know, this technology train continues to roll, and it's a whole lot different. In our day, you know, it was as good as it ever was, but I think things have really changed in a lot of respects for the better now because they have stayed up with current things and do things a lot different than we do. Because, you know, you got to realize when I first began, there was no computer. Mm-hmm. When I first began, there was no cell phone. There was no immediate technology and all the things that are going on now. I mean, I can remember going into airports all over the country and the world where we go to. When you wanted to make a phone call, there was a wall of phones that you could use. You know, now you can go into airports anywhere in Canada or in North America, just about any country, and you rarely ever even see an old-time phone, like a payphone, you know. So such things like that are different. And you got to realize as well, while I'm talking on that, I eased over into the travel. The travel now is completely different with all the security and the things that have happened with airports and all this stuff. Because you got to remember, in our day, we wrestled a lot more towns. For instance, there was one time I wrestled 63 straight nights.
Oh, wow.
And I did 53 of those days, I did airport flies. So 53 out of 63 days, I had to be in the airport. I mean, they do not do that anymore. The company does not run like that anymore. They don't run it that hard. And the people in the airlines wouldn't even be allowed to fly that much. So things have really changed.
Hillbilly Jim joining CFWE. Final question, Jim. I know you probably have so many memories. Give us a memory, Jim, that'll always stick in your heart.
I'll give you two of them real quick. The first one was the first time I walked into Madison Square Garden. Because as a kid down here in Kentucky and in the States here, Madison Square Garden was kind of a mecca. That was a big deal for me. And the other thing that's hard to get over was that WrestleMania 3 crowd at Pontiac, Michigan back in 1987 when we set that world's record. It was just hard to describe it to you if you didn't see it and wasn't in the middle of it. But having like 94,000 people indoors was really something. Those are the two real high spots that I remember a lot.
How was Blast from the Past a few weeks ago?
Wonderful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything's wonderful. Just thinking about all those things, and you know, I'm at the point now where I'm that guy that you got all these memories, and you know, we're so busy living in the now we forget we got a lot of years behind us, you know. But I will say this to all the Canadian fans: you guys are the greatest. I mean, I'm telling you. Listen, I've never had any distinction between being at home and being in Canada when I went there because the fans were always wonderful to me. And, you know, and if I ever needed a little help from anyone, say I got stuck and needed a ride to the airport, or I've even had people that offer to Jim, if you can't find a hotel, if you have a problem, come and stay at our house, or come over for a meal. I mean, I really felt like at that time our business was so good that the world was on fire for our business, and everybody was so into it. I felt at home just about anywhere I went. And I'll tell you what, you just can't say that very much today about anything, but I really believed that anywhere I was at, I felt like I didn't have no worries because it seemed like everyone had me looked after and they had my back, so to speak.